everybody, and welcome to Cana and Mike's Movie Night. Now, you may notice a few changes. One, Morgan, the official mascot of Denzicaster, is here, also known as our black cat. But you'll also notice a conspicuous lack of, various action figures behind me. Well, that's because it's not Denzicaster anymore. We're just Cana and Mike's Movie Night, because we're going to be covering a lot more than tokusatsu or toku adjacent. I'm sure we've got some musicals in our future, but my wife picks out some good ones, so hey. Tonight, though, we are not watching anything that is musical per se, although it does have a pretty good Beastie Boys song in it. Since Star Trek Beyond is right around the corner as of the time we're recording this, and it may get put up on the YouTube page a little out of sequence here on the ECS network, just so it'll be timely, we've decided to watch the two J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies here on the channel. And we are starting, of course, with Star Trek, the 2009 feature film. I guess I should probably hold it up where you see the spine, seeing as how the cover is just Chris Pine as James T. Kirk, or if I hold up by the back, you get Zach Quinto as Mr. Spock. So this is a reimagining, a reinterpretation of Gene Roddenberry's classic television series Star Trek, not really based on the movies or anything that came later. Real unique animal in Star Trek lore because, this guy basically takes all of Star Trek canon and chucks it out the window for the most part. There are a handful of things that stay the same. We'll probably discuss some of those during the actual review when Ken and I sit down to talk about the J.J. Abrams directed Star Trek. I shouldn't say Star Trek the Motion Picture, because that's the first one of the original series movies, but just Star Trek. That's all it is. So, kick back, relax. When we come back after the break, Ken and I will sit down and check out the 11th entry into the Star Trek feature film franchise, Star Trek from 2009. Stick around, more movie night when we come back. Okay, everybody, we are back, and we have just got done watching Star Trek. Again, I probably should show this spine first, because there's just a picture of Chris Pine on the front.
I think that's enough.
Star Trek, the 2009 J.J. Abrams installment into the Star Trek feature film franchise. The 11th entry into the series. Chris Pine as Captain James Tiberius Kirk, Zachary Quinto, and Leonard Nimoy, both as Mr. Spock. So, spoilers for the movie that came out in 2009 that you should have already watched.
It's not just Mr. Spock, it's Mr. Spock and Ambassador Spock. They are two separate entities, and they have two separate titles, and we need to keep this straight. Because when you start talking about them, it needs to be clear. Because obviously Nero has a problem. In the
credits, how we will refer to the two characters, there's Mr. Spock, which is Zachary Quinto in this movie, and there is Spock Prime, which is Leonard Nimoy, the original or Prime Universe Spock. Also, Carl Urban as the reincarnation of DeForest Kelly, a.k.a. Leonard Bones McCoy. Zoe Saldana as Lieutenant Uhura. I think it's John Cho as Hikaru Sulu. And unfortunately at this point, the late Anton Yelchin as Ensign Chekhov.
And Simon Pegg
as Lieutenant Commander Montgomery Scott. So...
Oh gosh, that was really bad.
Oh, I didn't say it was good. The movie was, but my accent was terrible.
The movie was good.
I used to be able to do a decent Scotch-Irish accent.
Well, I think it was just you screwed up on the words.
Anyway. And I think, cannot go without saying, and it would be grossly underrated if I did say this, believe it's Kurt Greenwood, if I'm not mistaken the actor's name, as Captain Christopher Pike, which was a tremendous shock for me when I saw him in the movie in theaters. So, to give you a little idea, folks, I am a huge Star Trek fan, always have been. I have seen every Star Trek movie since Star Trek V on opening night in theaters. I had never seen any of them in theaters more than once. This movie, I paid my own money to watch this movie in theaters 4 times on opening weekend.
You're so weird.
I saw the midnight showing on Thursday. I went back on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's how much I loved this movie when it came out in theaters. This is, on my all-time list, this is the 3rd greatest Star Trek movie ever made. Now, given that there have been 12, soon to be 13 of them, that's actually pretty high praise. So, your first impressions of the 2009 Star Trek, the movie, or...
You mean when it was originally released or from our actual movie night?
Sure, both.
Okay, well see, I didn't see that movie until 3 years later.
So you saw it in 2012.
I saw it in 2012, and it was because I was babysitting my friend's children, and the youngest one would go to sleep to this movie.
that does not speak well of it.
Well,
it's a better movie than that.
No. Well, a lot of infants, the flashy colors, which there's plenty of lens flare in this movie.
It's J.J. Abrams.
Will put a child to sleep. In case for all of y'all that don't know that, for some children, flashy lights are great. Anyways, so it was time for he needed to go to sleep. Put it in. He went to sleep. I enjoyed the movie.
Well, your first impressions of our actual movie night viewing experience for this one.
I realized that I had not seen this since we started. I actually purchased it on my own after seeing it.
Right.
And I'd watched it every year up until we got engaged.
Okay. But you had not seen it since we got married.
No, I have not seen it since we've gotten engaged.
Okay, so you have watched this in 2 years.
Okay. So... I was excited because I haven't watched it in a while. It's a good movie.
So, to give those of you out there who may not have actually seen this movie yet, because I do know there are people out there who are diehard Trek purists. You'll have to pardon if you hear some squeaking in the background. That's the Tribbles we have caged up over offset. But
Sweet Pea's enjoying the Tribbles.
Yes. The feature films, there are people out there who are purists who have never seen this movie or its sequel, because if it's not the original cast in the original series, then it's not Star Trek. Well, I will say this. Having seen this movie now as many times as I have, which is a large number, one of the things that strikes me very well about it is how well it pays homage to the original. It creates its own thing. It is an alternate universe. Basically, at some point after the finale of Star Trek Voyager, at some point after Star Trek Nemesis, which was the final Next Generation feature film, the Romulan homeworld is in danger. A sun goes supernova and is basically wiping out everything in its path. Romulus on the list. Ambassador Spock finds a way to stop the supernova by essentially creating a black hole within it and collapsing the supernova in on itself. His plan will work. Unfortunately, Romulus is destroyed before that can happen. And a mining ship captain named Nero winds up swearing vengeance and gets pulled through time with Ambassador Spock, but Nero shows up 25 years earlier than Spock did. Specifically, he shows up the day that James T. Kirk will be born aboard the USS Kelvin, where his father, George Kirk, serves as the first officer, eventually captain, through the circumstances of this feature film. So therein lies your first major difference with the original series, it being that Kirk grows up the son of a single mom instead of having his father to look up to. There are numerous other changes. Spock's homeworld, there's Zach Quinto as Spock, gets destroyed in the feature film. So rather than growing up leaning towards his Vulcan heritage, the only homeworld he has left is Earth. And so he has to lean a little bit more on his human side as far as his birth world is concerned. So, some very interesting differences and a lot of homages for this film. But like I said, very different. If you do walk into this film going, oh, it's a remake of the original series, you are liable to be in for a hell of a disappointment. So, let's talk about the story for this film. What did you think of the story behind the 2009 Star Trek?
Well, I liked it. See, I'm not a diehard Trekkie. I'm sorry. It's good, but...
He's a Whovian. Yeah. New Whovian.
I'm a new Whovian. I mean, the old stuff's good too. It's so long. Anyways, sorry. I don't do well with long, older things because for some reason my ADD kicks in and then I'm just...
Oh, sorry. Just my impersonation of her during one of those things. We watched the...
Anyways, what I was saying... storyline, I like it. I was not offended at all by the alternate universe. I know that there were a lot of people who were upset about the alternate universe. I know that there were a lot of people who were upset about just the whole movie itself. But overall, I think it has a good storyline. A lot of questions that you might develop during the movie are answered quickly and in a succinct fashion.
Yeah, the movie does a very good job of solving mysteries as they arise. It actually even addresses the idea of the numerous changes that we see happen very quickly. If you're not put off by the fact that Kirk's dad dies in the opening scene, which, by the way, how badass is Captain James T. Kirk? His dad is Thor. Just saying.
That's right. And his mom is Emma from Once Upon a Time.
So there you go.
Nothing like a fairy tale warrior princess.
A mythical hero, if ever there was one. But his, if you're not thrown off enough by his dad dying very early on, in the television series, they do not harp on his father through the original Star Trek television series very much at all. Now, they harp on Vulcan. We go there during the original series. The Vulcan heritage is a big deal. And so, when Vulcan blew up, and I'm sitting in theaters watching this, I didn't flip, but the movie had built up enough goodwill with me up to that point for me to say, okay, where in the world are you going with this? And then when eventually, on the bridge of the Enterprise, Spock, about 45 minutes into the movie, just says, no, this is an alternate reality. We are assuming that Nero knows everything that's going to happen, but how can he? Because when he showed up 25 years ago and killed your dad, he changed history. So, they do a tremendous job with that. The visuals in this movie, I will say this, lens flare aside, it's J.J. Abrams.
God, I hate the lens flare.
Hey, at least he didn't lens flare up Star Wars when he got his hands on that one. So,
which did surprise me.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting a few. I suspect Disney put the kibosh on that. But
good thing about Disney.
But with this, the visuals, lens flare aside, they took some pretty big risks, I felt, in this movie visually, because one, the Star Trek costumes, they went with the original series uniforms aboard ship. Now, when you see them at the Academy, when you see them at Starfleet headquarters, things like that, they're in very formal, nigh militaristic looking uniforms that the original series never used. But when they're aboard ship, they're in the original series uniforms, and those things, if you don't do something with it, it looks 60s as all get out. I mean, it's a product of its time. But they did a pretty good job of updating them, and they don't look campy.
No, it's because of the material. It looked like they used a lot of meshes and not quite spandex, but definitely stretchy material. Mm-hmm.
And then, like, the insignia were badges instead of patches on these uniforms. What almost looked like metal bands for the rank insignia on the rest. So they do a lot there. The Enterprise, in and of itself, it is one of the most iconic ships in all of science fiction history. But again, when you think of the movies and you think of the Enterprise, or at least the original series Enterprise, you think of the ones from Star Trek's 1 through 6. The original Enterprise, again, looks more than slightly dated. It's not sleek. It's
right.
not modern looking. But again, for this, I really think they actually pull it off. So.
Yes. No, I agree. I mean, like I said, I'm not quite as big of a.
So.
It's a good movie. Why can't we just leave it at that?
Because we have some time to kill.
Well, no, it's just, but you're going over things that I don't care if it looks campy or not. I watch campy crap. Have you not seen our musical shelf? I mean, really?
You're going to see our musical shelf too.
Yes,
over time,
you are.
So let's talk about, because I'm just talking about how they update certain things before we get to the biggest thing they update, which are the characters themselves. So Chris Pine is James T. Kirk, who's going to be very different than William Shatner's James T. Kirk.
That's right, because if you want to see William Shatner's Kirk, what you need to do is watch the newest Into the Woods movie, and Chris Pine does an awesome impersonation.
I don't think it's that bad. So
really, come on, baby. That was William Shatner all over that one.
So just the character.
We'll watch that one too.
Just the character of James T. Kirk.
He's a smartass.
Yeah, because James T. Kirk in the regular Star Trek universe, he grows up a Starfleet brat.
Right.
He grows up in a military family. This dude wrecks his stepdad's car while playing the Beastie Boys.
Well, not only that, but he's the smartest low-life, criminal.
Right.
They call him out in the bar, He's the most intelligent kid who served time for misdemeanors.
I think it's like the Midwest's only genius repeat offender.
Yeah, there we go.
Something like that.
But I mean, he's not the he's still a womanizer. I mean, you can't be Captain Kirk without being a womanizer. But he's got different attitude. He has different.
The Shatner's Kirk is a maverick. Pine's Kirk is a rebel.
Right. And the only reason he goes, I feel, into the academy is to call someone's bluff and be better than his dad.
Yeah, and basically he joined Starfleet because Captain Pike dared him to.
Which kind of, I'm like, really?
So,
really?
We'll move to the guy on the back of the box now, Zachary Quinto as Mr. Spock. Aside from the fact that he looks frighteningly like Leonard Nimoy in some shots.
Yeah. But he's also a smartass.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like,
It's a rare bird that can play a character almost emotionless. That's the thing.
And still be a smartass.
Well, Vulcans are portrayed typically in Star Trek as emotionless creatures. The idea of playing someone who is fighting to keep his emotions in check to come off that way, while you still have to get that he has those feelings as part of the performance. Nimoy was a master of it.
Right.
But
Nimoy was a master of it because he pretty much was able to create this character.
Well, he was able to create pretty much the entire Vulcan race.
Right.
So Zach Quinto walks into some incredibly large shoes to pull that off. And I thought he did so tremendously. Not only do you buy that he is fighting to keep these emotions under control, but when he loses control, you buy that too.
Yes, I agree.
So, we will move on to one of my wife's favorite characters now, Lieutenant Commander Montgomery Scott.
I love Simon Pegg! Who doesn't love Simon Pegg? If you don't love Simon Pegg, you're going to rot in hell.
I think that was a little unnecessary, but this escalated quickly, folks. I thought it was very interesting that they gave Scotty a sidekick, the alien midget. or alien little person,
well, he
or
didn't
whatever.
have Nick Frost. He has to have someone.
So do you?
He rocks it with Nick Frost.
Do you think? Now that brings up something I never thought about because I was not a huge Simon Pegg fan going.
He was on Doctor
Who. Yes, he was,
and he's a huge Huvian too.
But I want to ask. So you bring up an interesting point though. Simon Pegg is almost always part of a two-man act.
Yeah.
Do you think they created because this character, the alien character that is with him in this movie as his sidekick, does not exist in the regular Star Trek universe? Do you think they created that character basically as a Nick Frost stand-in, just so Simon Pegg would have someone to bounce off of?
Yeah. I think
really?
It's quite possible. Simon Pegg... Okay. First time I ever saw Simon Pegg was in Doctor Who. Ninth Doctor episode, the Mighty Jagrafess.
Yes.
Okay? He's talking to a bunch of people who are dead that are tied into a computer system and the Mighty Jagrafess. He calls him Max. Okay? But he's playing off of someone else. He's not really funny in that episode when he's not playing off of the Mighty Jagrafess. And then, Shaun of the Dead, World's End, Hot Fuzz, it's Nick Frost. I mean...
Who would later show up in Doctor Who as Santa Claus.
Which is appropriate. Nick Frost, Santa Claus.
So...
Anyways, but no, I really do think that it was to give the comedic effort for Simon Pegg was to have someone to bounce it off.
Okay. And that makes sense to me. So, we take a look at probably my favorite character in the J.J. Abrams new movies. Carl Urban. Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy. We finally figure out what the hell Bones stands for. Of course, you always assume in the original series that it stands for Sawbones, euphemism for doctor. In this, it's because that's the only thing that his wife left him in the divorce.
She even took the planet.
Yeah, she took the whole damn planet in the divorce. All she left him with was his bones. We see him... Carl Urban is such a... I have come to appreciate him as very much a chameleon-type actor because in this, when I say he comes off to me as the reincarnation of DeForest Kelley, he really does, to me, come off as DeForest Kelley. He plays that part very much the way you would expect McCoy to act, and which I appreciate because if you look at all the character backstories going into this, and
I can't take the flashing.
If you see the lens flare again, if you look at all of the characters from the original series to their Abrams movie counterpart, McCoy's character probably changed the least because he's...
Why screw with perfection?
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but the character doesn't have a massive life-changing event that alters the way his life would have progressed, other than the fact that he winds up on the Enterprise when he does. But up to the point that he's on the Enterprise, his life's pretty much probably the same. The two that have the biggest changes are Kirk and Spock. So their characters are wildly different. But McCoy's... I think you leave McCoy the same for two reasons. One, because...
You need a stable character?
Yeah, you need that one character you're going to look at and go, it's the same guy. But you still get, and you get that out of Sulu and Chekhov to a lesser degree. But they're not the stars of the movie, so to speak. But also because the magic of Star Trek in the original series was the triumvirate, Kirk, Spock, McCoy. And the idea always has been that Spock is the intellectual, analytical mind. McCoy is the emotional, conscious. One is your head, the other is your heart, and together they guide Kirk. And Kirk is, the swing vote in any of the decisions. But it's as if Spock is speaking one half of Kirk's mind and McCoy is speaking the other. They are his voices. They are his chorus.
Oh, so they're the little angels.
Yeah. I mean, they're Kirk's chorus in a lot of ways. So...
Nice reference to Greek comedy and tragedy.
There you go. See?
Kudos, baby. Kudos.
See, and I went to college to be a history teacher. She's the one that went in for dramatic arts and music. So, but anyway, that's the role they play with Kirk. And while you can toy a little bit with Spock and have him still fill that role, I think if you try to alter McCoy from being anything other than what he is, which is the lead with your heart, do the right thing Southern doctor, it ceases to work.
Yeah.
And Carl Urban does a tremendous job with that role. Although they do let him flesh out the Doctor a little more, because Dr. McCoy in the original series was pretty much just the Doctor. In this one, at one point, we see in a simulator at the Academy, but we see McCoy at the helm of a starship, actually piloting it. So apparently this McCoy is a little more fleshed out as far as his skill set is concerned.
Right.
The last character, because, and it's not to downplay them any, I'll mention them again in a minute, but Sulu is pretty much Sulu. I mean, he's the guy driving the ship. I hate to say that. That's not to downplay John Cho's performance at all.
No, I mean, I think even though with that definition, you've got to admit, I mean, he has to take control of the bridge several times because every single person who is captain at the time decides they're going to leave.
But
and he, when he,
it's okay for, this is the film that establishes Abrams' Star Trek universe. John Cho, we'll talk about it next week, or in a couple of weeks. I'm not a huge fan of the movie, but so in Into Darkness.
I'm so proud. You deserve a cookie.
In Into Darkness, Chekhov and Sulu get a little more of the center stage.
Right.
You're in this movie, you're focusing on the characters that have always been the main 3/4 when you add in Scotty. But Uhura does get a good bit of time in this one, and Uhura winds up in the role as Spock's love interest.
Right.
It's a nod to the original series, a little bit, because there's supposed to be this underlying tension in a couple episodes. But I'll be perfectly honest. I thought Uhura rebuffing the captain repeatedly was funny as hell.
Which one? They were both captains.
Captain Kirk.
Okay.
If I say the captain, I'm talking about Kirk.
There were multiple captains. You need
there
to
were
specify.
there were 5 captains. It's Star Trek. You say the captain, it's Kirk.
Bullshit.
Or at least in this context. But then you
Bullshit.
But anyway, you have her rebuffing Kirk repeatedly. That I found terribly hilarious. I found the relationship with her and Spock amusing and interesting. I really don't know if I bought entirely into it.
No. I kept expecting her to change her mind and go with Kirk. What? He's a womanizer.
Yeah, that was the bit of Star Trek history. The first the first interracial kiss in television history was
Star Trek.
Was Star Trek.
And
it was Kirk and Uhura.
And they tried to pull it, and Shatner decided he wasn't, so he kept screwing up all the takes until the end of the day, and then he did the one that he wasn't supposed to do.
Yeah, Shatner made sure that was going to happen. But I'm not sure I entirely bought that. It was fun, but in the context of Star Trek and who the characters are, I really it didn't sing with me. If there's a bad part to this movie, poor Eric Bana. This dude can't catch a break.
He doesn't need to know.
I'm going to ask a question, because you're the between the two of us, you are the knowledgeable theater trained actress. I'm not. I was in the wrestling business for 11 years. I've got experience acting, but not acting. I've never been a stage actor, never claimed to be. But I've only seen Eric Bana in a handful of things, right? Nero in Star Trek being one of them, The Incredible Hulk being one of them.
No.
The Hulk,
yes,
the first one. The Ang Lee one. Is he just bad, or is there something missing when this dude winds up in a movie?
Here is the problem.
Okay.
I have seen Eric Bana in non-fantasy, sci-fi, or comic book related movies. And he is fine.
So basically, the minute you put weird ears or green skin on him, he's done?
Or base anything off of mythology. Anything that is not a romantic, cry your eyes out movie, Eric Bana sucks at.
You heard it here first, folks. Probably not, but...
No. I mean, the shaved head and the markings and everything.
If you look back in the Star Trek feature films, the one thing that they terribly excel at is very unique, captivating villains.
He's not.
Ricardo Montalban is Khan in Star Trek II.
He has nice chest.
And it was his, according to Nicholas Meyer, the director.
It was nice.
Christopher Lloyd as Commander Krug in Star Trek III. You have General Chang, and I hate the fact that the actor's name escapes me at the moment, in Star Trek VI. For all the shit that everyone can hand over to Generations that had a strong villain, Malcolm McDowell played the villain in that. Dr. Soren. You have the Borg Queen in First Contact. And Tom Hardy in Star Trek Nemesis, and even F. Murray Abraham in Insurrection. They've never wanted for strong actors playing very strong villains.
Eric Bana is not a strong villain. He is a mopey baby who needs his ass kicked.
Yeah,
and he gets that in the movie.
Yeah, but he feels cookie cutter.
There was no creativity to his character. And maybe it was just that it was not fleshed out a lot, because that was the one part of the storyline I had a problem with. We don't know why he's there other than Romulus has been destroyed. Well, and that he's looking for Spock. That's all we know he's there for, but we don't understand the actual drive, because let me tell you, if my planet is destroyed, I'm not going to go after one person because my planet's destroyed. I'm going to go after that person because my planet's destroyed, because something important has happened due to that, a catalyst.
Right.
The planet destroying is not it.
Right.
We have to wait until Nero captures another captain to find out that it's his...
All the captains.
That his wife was killed on the planet that was destroyed.
So...
And he didn't even do a good job of portraying the emotion of a loss of a spouse.
Well, let's take a look at the last major character in this movie, which is Leonard Nimoy making his triumphant return to the Star Trek motion pictures as Spock Prime, Ambassador Spock. His character, the danger of putting him in this movie, and I was legitimately afraid of it at first, the danger of putting him in this movie is, here is the one character that does carry over from the original series, the original cast and crew,
and the original universe.
And if you are not careful, he could overpower anything that's on screen with him at the same time. One, Leonard Nimoy is a hell of an actor. But he really could have overpowered and been the center of attention for any scene he was in. Not just because of his talent, but because the Star Trek fans that were in the audience, if you were a fan, if you don't put him on equal footing with the characters he's with.
Right.
And I think the moment where I ceased looking at Chris Pine in the movie as Chris Pine, and where I actually bought into this is Captain Kirk, is when Leonard Nimoy looks at him and goes, Jim. And you get the sense, he plays that scene with Chris Pine with the emotion and the gravitas you would have expected had it been William Shatner.
Yes, but he also doesn't get a lot of screen time, so that does help balance out, if he's going to, because we really only see him twice, and they're for very short periods. They are not prolonged. Right.
We see him once where he was stranded, and he kind of fills in the blanks for Nero's backstory and how all this crap happened via mind meld, which Star Trek has used in the past as a Deus Ex Machina type of thing. In this case, I think it was used judiciously to keep the movie going. It's great in a movie. It's terrible on TV sometimes.
Well, and it also helped, instead of doing him just telling the story without getting the visuals, it does help fill in the blanks there.
Right. And then we see him at the end where he interacts with himself, where he interacts with Mr. Spock, Zachary Quinto's character. His portrayal in the movie, and him being in there, unlike Into Darkness, where he was a Deus Ex Machina, but his arrival in this movie and his portrayal, I don't want to say it legitimized the movie, because that makes it sound like the movie wouldn't have stood on its own without him, and I don't think that's the case. I think
but he's the one that tells us that it's an alternate universe. He clears up for all of y'all who were sitting in the movie theaters, who were diehards, who were going, "What the hell? That didn't happen in the original."
Well, no, we got that moment before he showed up.
But he pretty much lays it out, going, "This is an alternative universe. This is not the world I came from."
And what I think is tremendous about his character in this film is he's the one that convinces Kirk that Spock feels.
Right.
Because he is now seeing Spock, literally hundreds of years older and more mature, who is now the guy who has embraced the idea of being the half human, half Vulcan. The guy who's like, you lied. No, I exaggerated.
No, I allowed you to infer.
Well, no, I was using a line from Star Trek 2.
Anyway, okay. Well,
but just an example. I allowed him to infer that this would happen. Some of the stuff that I like that she's going to zone out on here for just a second, because she won't get all of these. I appreciated the winks and nods. I love it when you do something that has a legacy to it, like Star Trek, and you're going to remake something like this. And this isn't a remake, but it is a reimagining. I love the little winks and nods that go back to the older shows and whatnot. The kind of things that just go, yes, we know there's a history to this, and no, we haven't. We're not throwing it all out the window. For instance, in the Kobayashi Maru test, which, if you watch Star Trek 2, you know that Kirk cheated, but we've never actually seen him cheat. So therefore, here's the moment where he cheats in the Kobayashi Maru and he beats the no-win scenario.
I did understand that one.
Well, here's the part that the little nod. He's eating an apple during the Kobayashi Maru scenario. In Star Trek 2, when he's explaining that he cheated to beat the no-win scenario, he's eating an apple. So they put that little nod in there at that moment. There's the first time we see Scotty and we find out why he's been banished to this station out in the middle of nowhere. It's because he ran a transporter experiment on Admiral Archer's prize Beagle. That's Porthos from Star Trek Enterprise. That's Captain Archer's dog. Even the planet they're on, Delta Vega, where he's stuck at a Starfleet fuel station, comes from the second pilot episode of Star Trek where No Man Has Gone Before. They wind up at Delta Vega to refuel. So there are lots of little winks and nods. Even that Sulu is an expert fencer. Now granted he wasn't going around all topless like George Takei screaming Richelieu beware, but still he's out there sword fighting, which is very cool. So I love that. Anton Yelchin, who unfortunately we lost this year before Star Trek Beyond has been released. He actually does have a Russian background, so he knows how to speak with a real Russian accent, unlike Walter Koenig. But the one thing he did to keep the character similar was he flipped his V's and W's. So it was still Wessel instead of Vessel. So those little winks and nods I loved. The only thing I think that I regret, if that's even the word I would want to use, about this movie is there's a part of me that wishes the first movie had more of Pike and Kirk together in it. because I liked their dynamic together.
I was fine without it.
Oh, I'm sure you were, but I liked the Pike-Kirk dynamic in the bar. I would have liked to have seen something, maybe a movie between this and Into Darkness or something, where you see that surrogate father relationship. And the reason I think I liked it so much, and I loved seeing it together, so this is the fanboy dream coming out. In the original series...
I might fade out again.
No, in the original series, the character Christopher Pike is from the original pilot, played by Jeffrey Hunter. By the time they shot the second pilot and then the rest of the series, William Shatner had taken over as James Kirk. But they wrote into the series that Pike was the first captain of the Enterprise before James T. Kirk. They wanted to do they wanted to use the footage from the original pilot, The Cage. They did. They turned it into a two-parter called The Menagerie. But they couldn't get Jeffrey Hunter to come back at the time. So they basically put a dude in burn makeup, stuck him in a chair, and he never speaks. His chair beeps. Which is where the wheelchair from the end of this movie comes from, is Pike in the chair. But the thing you never actually get to see in the original series is Kirk and Pike together on some sort of an adventure. And that's maybe the one thing I felt like, I don't want to say we got cheated out of, but that I would have liked to have seen. I mean, like I said, that's the fanboy in me. Yeah, it's the fanboy in me. I freely admit that. But I would have really enjoyed seeing that.
It wasn't necessary.
Was there anything in this movie you didn't care for that's not Eric Bana or lens flares?
Nope. Eric Bana and lens flares pretty much covers my disgruntledness against this movie.
I hated the Narada. Eric Bana's ship.
Yeah, it was kind of... Well, isn't that connected to Eric Bana? So it just kind of...
Well, no.
I consider a ship an extension of its captain.
I hated the design. I genuinely do not like the design of that ship.
It looked like a deformed squid.
Yeah, if the squid had like 500 tentacles. Well, maybe that's the deformity. I don't know. But...
A deformed squid, baby! You can't get more deformed than having more legs than it should!
But, no, that literally is the only thing that I could point at and go, I really didn't like that about this movie. I mean, I can even stomach Eric Bana to a point in the movie. I just don't think he's... No, I don't think he's good, but I also don't think he's bad. I don't think he detracted from the movie. So, you know, whereas I've watched Star Trek stuff where the villain detracted from it, and this was not one of them. I've seen Star Trek 5. It's garbage.
Go to your room. You're grounded. No, Eric Bana sucks.
So, overall, your final thoughts on the original Star Trek? The 2009 Star Trek movie.
I like it. I give it a cell phone up. I mean down. Cell phone down. 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 Down.
I saw the movie. I paid to see this movie in theaters 4 times, full price. That should give you my opinion of it. It's tremendous. The only 2 Star Trek movies that are on my all-time list that are higher than this, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and First Contact, are the only 2. To me, it's the 3rd greatest Star Trek movie ever made. Fantastic flick, well worth your time. If you own it, I would recommend going to see it before you see Beyond, just as a primer to refresh yourself on this version of the original series cast.
Don't watch the original like someone did before seeing Into Darkness.
We'll talk about that next time. Because next time we are talking about Into Darkness. We are talking about Star Trek Into Darkness next time here on Movie Night as we ramp up to go check out Star Trek Beyond. Also, at some point in the not terribly distant future here on Movie Night, we are going to have a special episode, just so everybody out there knows, because we are going to go see Ghostbusters in theaters. I'm not talking about the original Ghostbusters. We're going to watch that one too. That's actually on our list, is to watch the original Ghostbusters.
But we're not going to watch that before going to see the new one.
We're not going to watch it first.
We don't make that mistake anymore now, do we?
Well,
we don't make that mistake anymore, do we?
I might watch it before we go.
We will not make that mistake.
But But definitely, we're going to go check out the new Ghostbusters here in the 2016 incarnation in the not-too-distant future. And we'll let you know what we thought of it when we get back from the theater on that one. So, until next time on Movie Night, when we check out Star Trek Into Darkness, I'm Mike.
I'm Cana.
And we'll see you next time on Movie Night.